Good morning, children. So, I'm going to start the first chapter. First of all, I will just simply read the chapter, then I will explain. Okay? In previous classes, we have learned that all the processing of data happens inside the CPU. The CPU is also known as the brain of the computer. The CPUs of a PC and a laptop differs in their internal structure as shown in the figure. In this chapter we will learn about the internal working of the CPU. In this chapter we will learn about the internal working of the CPU, means how central processing unit works. Okay, central processing unit is known as brain of the computer. It controls everything within the computer. It controls all the activities within the computer. Before we understand what happens after a computer is switched on, we need to know what a motherboard is. It is an important part of the computer. It contains the various components that handle the flow of information inside the computer. These include the memory, the ports which are used to connect to other devices outside the computer, power supply, etc. That means our next topic is switching on a computer. So before starting with this topic, we need to know about the motherboard. What is motherboard? Okay. Motherboard is an important part of the computer. It contains various components and it controls the flow of information. Flow of means the going of informations. Okay, the transporting of information, you can say. This is the motherboard and it controls flow of information, means one system to other system and one device to other device or one part to other part. It flows the information, it transfers the information. Okay, so how to switch on a computer, our next topic. Switching on a computer. When a computer is switched on, it takes from a few seconds to a couple of minutes for the user login screen to appear. What happens during this time? The process of starting a computer is also known as booting. What is booting? This is very important. What is booting? The process of starting a computer is known as booting, means when we start the computer it starts booting. Okay, so this is known as, you can feel the sounds comes from the computer. Okay, that sound, that is the booting. It starts the booting inside the computer. So what is booting? The process of starting a computer is known as booting. The following processes that take place when a computer is booted up. Power, good signal. When the computer is switched on, the CPU gets a power supply. When we switch on the computer, the CPU gets the power supply. Okay, which when we switch on the power switch, then CPU gets the power supply, which sends a signal to the motherboard. Then CPU sends the signal to whom? To the motherboard. CPU sends the signal to the motherboard. It activates the basic input output system. Then it starts with the input output system. Input output system means, input means what? The instructions which we are giving, that is input. Okay, and the computer is responding with our instruction, that is the output. So first of all, when we switch on the power switch, then CPU gets the power supply. Then CPU sends the signal to the motherboard. To whom? To the motherboard. And motherboard activates whom? Input output system. The motherboard activates the basic input output system, that is BIOS, basic input output system. BIOS. What is the full form of BIOS? Basic Input Output System, which is on the motherboard, and it is placed within the motherboard. This is the motherboard. This BIOS, Basic Input Output System, it is present where? It is present within the motherboard. Okay. Next is BIOS. This is the Basic Input Output System. So till now we know that Basic Input Output System is activated, right? Okay. Now BIOS refers to the instructions for booting a computer. BIOS refers means BIOS starts in Basic Input Output System. It starts the booting of a computer. It gives the instructions for booting, means for starting the booting, means starting the computer. BIOS is a part of the ROM. BIOS is a part of the ROM. ROM means read-only memory. We have learnt that ROM cannot be modified or updated by the user. Yes, read-only memory. We can read, but we cannot modify it. We cannot update it. We cannot correct it. Okay. The instructions on the ROM are installed by the computer manufacturer. Within the instructions which are present within the ROM, these are given by the computer manufacturer. The computer manufacturer has given some instructions. Already they have installed some instructions within the ROM, read-only memory, which cannot be modified or cannot be corrected or cannot be updated by the user. Who are the user? We are the user. User means what? User means the person who is using the computer system, right? The permanent software placed on the read-only memory is known as firmware. The permanent software which is placed on the read-only memory is known as firmware. What is firmware? The permanent software which is one firmware. What is firmware? It is one of the software which is permanently placed within the ROM, within the read-only memory. Examples of firmware include the code used in lifts, remote controls, music players, printers, and so on. The codes which are given within the remote control, can you change it? The instructions which are given within the remote control or lifts, no, we can't change those instructions. These instructions are given by the manufacturer. Okay, so these are some examples of firmware. It is permanent, one of the permanent software which is placed within the read-only memory, and within these some instructions are given by the manufacturer. Music player, printers, the working of printers, can you change it? The working of printer? No, we can't change it. Music player? No, we can't change it because these instructions are given by the manufacturer. Okay, this is read-only memory, ROM. The firmware has the instructions for booting up and is known as the BIOS, which starts the power on self-test. After that, post has been started. Okay, BIOS starts the power on self-test post. The post checks if all hardware components are working properly. What is the function of post? The function of post is it checks all the hardware components are working properly, starting with the RAM. Means what are the hardwares? The components which are connected with the computer system, like keyboard, mouse. So post checks whether all the hardware working properly or not, starting with the RAM. Then RAM, it starts with the checking with the RAM. What is the full form of RAM? Random access memory. It also checks for secondary storage, input and output devices such as the mouse, keyboard, monitor, speaker. All the hardwares are properly connected or not. Post checks it. The keyboard, speaker and mouse lights get turned on and the monitor displays an initial loading screen. When we start on the computer system, CPU, then UPS CPU, then our monitor, then you can see one light get turned on the mouse, keyboard and speaker which are connected with that computer system, right? Yes. And the monitor displays an initial loading screen, and the monitor displays one initial loading screen. It displays one screen. When all the checks are done, the control is passed on to the operating system. When everything is checked by the post, then control is passed on to the OS, to the operating system. An OS, what is the function of OS? An OS is stored on the hard drive. It connects the hardware and software of the computer. It works like a bridge in between hardware and software. Okay, here post checks all the hardwares are connected or not. After that, the gap, minimize the gap in between hardware and software. OS works on it. Okay, OS works on it. It works like a bridge in between the hardware and software. It connects the hardware with the software of the computer so that the computer works properly. Okay, the BIOS transfer it from the hard drive to the RAM. At this stage, the user sees the user login screen and the computer is completely booted up. After that, the completely booting get over. Understood? Yes. First of all, we need to switch on the power switch, then CPU gets the power supply. It sends the signal to the motherboard, then motherboard activates the BIOS. After that, BIOS refers the computer for booting, gives the instruction to the computer for booting. After that, BIOS starts the post and sends the instructions to the post for checking the hardware. Then post checks all the hardware components are working properly or not. Then it passed on the control to the OS. OS checks. OS works like a bridge in between the hardware and software and connects hardware with the software of the computer so that the computer works properly. Okay, so this is how one computer, when we switch on the computer, this is how a computer works. Okay, and this is the diagram. This is one of the most important diagram. It is the booting process diagram. Power on computer. When we power on, then the BIOS performs the post, then it gives the it passed on, then post passed on the control to the OS, and all the data access are stored in the disk and RAM. RAM is the random access memory and disk is the secondary storage memory. This is the structure of booting process. Okay, so in the next class I will start with the data exchange between devices. I hope you have understood this topic. Okay, if you are having any doubt, you can comment in the comment section so that in next video I will clear your doubt. Okay, bye bye, have a nice day.